So a lot of people are talking about berberine lately. Some call it nature's Ozempic. Others say it works as well as metformin for blood glucose control. And if you spend enough time on the internet, you'll likely find someone claiming that it cures everything from diabetes to fatty liver to high cholesterol. So what is actually true? Well, recently I went through some of the newest, highest quality research that I could find, multiple meta-analyses, randomized controlled trials, and one review that pulled together more than 50 systematic reviews. I'll link the studies down below if you want to read them yourself, but here's what I found. And for context, berberine is not a new drug. It's a naturally occurring compound that's found in several plants. It's been used in traditional Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine for over 3,000 years. But researchers got interested because it seems to influence blood sugar, cholesterol, fat metabolism, and inflammation. Over the last 20 years, that interest has turned into a real question. Does it actually work? And the good news, we finally have better research to answer that question than we did even just a few years ago. And this is why a single study isn't enough. With supplements especially, I think we need to be cautious about hanging some conclusion on one promising study. Single studies can be small, they can be flawed, or they can be right just by chance. So that's why it makes a difference when researchers pool a lot of studies together. One paper I reviewed looked at 54 systematic reviews covering 70 health outcomes across 9 different diseases. And that's a huge amount of data. And the real value wasn't just did berberine look helpful, it was how good is the evidence behind those studies that are out there. Because across type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, fatty liver, high cholesterol, researchers repeatedly found that berberine improved important metabolic markers. But here's the honest part, those same researchers rated much of this underlying evidence as low quality. And even though results often appeared encouraging, that's not the same thing as proof. And that's not me being negative, that's just being accurate. I really think berberine is one of the more genuinely interesting supplements that's being studied right now, right up there with creatine. The signal on blood sugar, insulin resistance, cholesterol, and fatty liver is really encouraging, but we still don't know which patients benefit the most, the ideal dose, how long someone should take it, which formulation works best, what happens after 5 or 10 years of use. And those are really fair questions, and right now we just don't have solid answers. So would I recommend it? If a patient with prediabetes, insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, or fatty liver was sitting across from me? And my answer is maybe. It depends on their full picture and what else they're managing. But if someone's also committed to the fundamentals, better nutrition, losing excess weight, building muscle, walking more, sleeping enough, I think berberine becomes a very reasonable conversation to bring up with one's doctor. And after more than 3 decades in medicine, in the ER, and in my own weight management practice, here's what I've learned. People often overestimate what a supplement can do, and they often underestimate what consistently taking care of themselves can do. Strength training, eating enough protein, maintaining a healthy weight, managing blood pressure, sleeping well, staying active. None of that's super sexy, but it stood the test of time and we all know the benefit. Now, does that mean supplements are pointless? Of course not. Creatine helps build and maintain muscle. Vitamin D supports bone health and other metabolic processes for a lot of people. Omega-3s may help support cardiovascular health. And I think berberine may earn a place on that list in time for the right person. Not as a replacement for the fundamentals, but something that can build on that foundation. And I know from the comments on this channel that a lot of people have grown skeptical of traditional medicine and the pharmaceutical influence over how medicine is carried out. And many people would rather try something that's seen as more natural before reaching for a prescription. That skepticism doesn't automatically make a supplement the better choice. But I do think it means that doctors should stay open to non-pharmaceutical options when the evidence genuinely supports that. Now, while I was researching all this, I kept running into something that I thought was very perplexing. According to multiple studies, the body absorbs surprisingly very little berberine. Some estimates suggest under 1% of what you actually swallow makes it to the bloodstream. So here's the mystery. If your body absorbs so little of it, how can it actually have meaningful effects on blood sugar, on cholesterol, even fatty liver? But science can get weird. And whenever biology doesn't seem to make sense, that's that's very often where the most interesting discoveries begin. Berberine is one of those stories. The more researchers learn about it, the more fascinating it becomes. And maybe they've been asking the wrong question. For years, scientists assumed that if berberine worked, it had to be because enough of it reached the bloodstream. That just seems logical, right? But apparently that's not the whole story. Researchers now think one of berberine's biggest effects may actually begin inside your intestines, long before much of it ever reaches the bloodstream. And it appears to interact with your gut bacteria, trigger signaling within the intestines, influencing how the body handles metabolism, and even affecting bile acids. And your gut just isn't a tube. Many years ago, the digestive tract was viewed as little more than a long tube where food gets broken down and absorbed. Today, we know it's involved in much more than that. It's home to trillions of bacteria. It communicates with your immune system. It produces its own signaling molecules. It even influences metabolism. And berberine appears to interact with that entire environment, which is a big part of why it may work despite barely entering the bloodstream. And I think this is why researchers are studying different formulations of berberine, liposomal berberine, phytosomes, nanoparticle versions, and dihydroberberine marketed as improvements. But here's where I get a bit cautious. Just because a formulation produces higher blood levels doesn't necessarily mean it produces better health outcomes. And those are two different questions. So we can't confuse innovation with proof. Science tends to move in stages. First, researchers discover something interesting. Next, companies build products around it. And often only later do we learn whether those products actually improve the outcomes that matter. And berberine and its newer formulations are still moving through that process. And the fact is, not all berberine products are created equal. I think looking for third-party testing verification, ingredient purity standards, manufacturing that follows good manufacturing processes, because with a compound that's already absorbed this poorly, a low-quality product doesn't seem to make much sense to put into your body. As far as side effects, given how much berberine interacts with the gut, it shouldn't surprise anyone that GI side effects are common. Nausea, bloating, constipation, diarrhea. That's the trade-off of a compound that does so much of what it does right there in your intestines. So after all this time reading about berberine, what's my biggest takeaway? It's not really about berberine. It's about the things we take for granted and assume to be true. Sometimes the body reminds us that it's more complex than we give it credit for. What seems obvious sometimes turns out to be wrong. And occasionally, a molecule from a plant teaches us something new about human biology. I think berberine may end up being one of those stories. As always, this isn't personal medical advice. It's meant to help you understand the science a little better so that you can have a more informed conversation with your own doctor. Whether you ultimately decide to take berberine or not, I hope this helps you appreciate something. Science isn't a collection of final answers. It's an ongoing process of asking better questions. If you've tried berberine, I'd love to hear how it went. Did your blood sugar or your A1C change? Any effect on fatty liver or cholesterol? Any side effects? Let me know down in the comments. I read as many of them as I can. And a lot of my videos start because of the questions that you ask. Thank you so much for watching. Please share this video with someone you feel would benefit from watching it as well. All the best to you. Take care of yourself, stay strong, and I will see you in the next video.